Hello and welcome to Author Hub's first ever Google Hangout. It's my pleasure to be hosting today's session along with a panel of special guests who are going to be answering your questions all on social media and how to really use it as a platform to engage with readers and basically make yourself more discoverable online. We're expecting today's session to be running till around 3:15, 3:30, but don't worry if you can't watch all of today's session. We are recording and we'll make sure that a version is available for you to view online at a later date. The topics that we're going to be discussing today really cover aspects of information that's already available on the Author Hub website. So if you would like more information on anything that we discussed today, then please do visit our site, which is cambridge.org/authorhub. And firstly, today I'd just like to introduce myself and the panel who are going to be answering your questions. So I'm Amy Watson. I'm a marketing executive at Cambridge University Press, and I'm also a member of the Author Hub team. And on a daily basis, this sees me edit and film author videos, manage our LinkedIn account, and help create the variety of Author Hub resources that we have to offer. I'm also joined today by Andrew Martin.
Hello.
Hi, Andrew. Andrew is a senior inbound marketing executive at Cambridge University Press and is also a member of the Author Hub team. Most recently, Andrew has helped create our Author Hub guide to increasing search engine rankings. It's also my pleasure to welcome two external special guests for today's panel. So, firstly, we're joined by Sue Keogh, who is founder of Sookio, a Cambridge, hi Sue, a Cambridge-based business offering copywriting, web content, and social media services to clients. Sue also runs regular workshops on writing for the web and social media, and she shares practical tips on engaging audiences. And last but certainly no means least, we have Ashley. Hi, Ashley.
Hi.
Ashley comes from a background working as a social media manager for a large insurance broker and now works as an account manager for Zazzle Media, who are a creative digital marketing agency who offer a variety of services including content strategy, digital PR, SEO, data insight, in order to help drive audience growth. So hello all and thank you for your time. So we've got quite a lot of questions to get through in today's session. So let's start off with our first one, which is comes from an author who asks, why should I use social media as an author and how does it allow me to engage with readers? So Sue, can I hand this one over to you to start off with, please?
I think the beauty about social media for authors is that it allows you to build this community of people who are interested in your work throughout the whole process. So whereas before you used to kind of work away in silence for months on end, and then a book comes out, and then you go on this big marketing blitz, the marketing trail, you can do it kind of little by little throughout the process of writing the book and build up this community of followers who are interested and engaged in your work. So before the book even comes out, they're interested in just loyalty. It also gives you a chance to stand out in what's very crowded coming out nowadays. So many authors trying to make themselves heard. Can be really helpful in that.
Fantastic, thank you. And Ashley, can I ask what your thoughts are on this question as well, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I think social for an author is just a fantastic conversational tool. So as Sue says, I mean, you can get feedback all the way along the process. If you're just talking about a specific scene, I mean, you can get some instant feedback about it. And particularly if we look at sort of platforms, I think Twitter being the conversational tool that it is, I mean, it's just a great way to get ideas and just sort of spitball things. I mean, you don't have to necessarily take into account all the feedback that you get, but it's great that you're generating interest all the way sort of along the route, I suppose. And as and when that book does finally develop and becomes the finished product, then you've already got sort of an engaged audience that you know are going to be interested in it. And I think that's a really special thing about social media.
I think as well, just another point for me as well is that because authors, you know, what they do is write and they write well, then social media is a real opportunity for them to shine. You know, so very well because they're just great with words. So it's a really opportunity to kind of show off your craft. All often got a book coming out.
Mm-hmm. And Andrew, what are your thoughts on this question?
Well, kind of really touches on what Ashley and Sue have said there, really, in that it's about building an audience before the finished book is actually out there. So if you're wanting to grow that audience up and have an audience there ready who are interested in your book when it's actually ready to be published, then social media is a great way of actually building that up.
Mm-hmm. So the crucial thing about using social media, I guess, is really to kind of make sure that you're using it prior to a book launching, so that you already have an audience, a captive audience, ready to engage with your work. Yeah,
absolutely.
Cool, Fab, thank you. So our second question comes from an author. It's a question actually that the Author Hub team are asked about a lot. And the question is, I don't feel comfortable using social media to sell my book. So how else can I use it as a way to market myself and my work? So Sue, can I hand this one over to you?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing here is that there's so many different platforms that you can try. So if you feel uncomfortable about being on Twitter, for example, where you might feel that you've got to be really promotional or something like that, what you could do instead is have go on Instagram, for example, and as you're researching the book, you could travel around the country, go into the, say if it's a book to do with history, you're visiting all these different sites. Can you take photos as you go along? So to you, it won't feel like you're doing traditional marketing, but you're still giving these little teasers, little hints about what would be in the book. Or you could write a blog, and then you're a bit more in control. It could be just a piece that goes out once a month, where you're talking about your writing process, maybe other books that you love yourself, so you don't have to feel that you've got to be very salesy and promotional and make it about marketing. It's more about showing your passion for writing and for this particular topic, and also kind of teasing it might be, what might be to come, to keep people engaged and keep them looking forward to your next move.
Mm-hmm. And Ashley, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really consider social your traditional selling tool anyway, so just self-promotion in its own right and you constantly flogging your wares, so to speak, you constantly going on about your book and selling your book is not really going to be making the most of the opportunity that social affords you. It's very much about awareness. It's about raising the profile of you as the author, not about a specific book that you're going to create. And that's really where sort of social comes into its own. I mean, it's very much a brand or a persona awareness tool, and with that in mind, you're very much on the level of your audience, so you can talk to them on a much flatter scale, so you're talking on very much the same level that they are, and you're getting their interaction straight away. So I don't think you should be looking to shy away from social if you're just a little bit timid in terms of promoting your book, because yeah, that's not really what we'd consider it used for anyway. And yeah, I think it's a great way to promote what you do. So if you do write blogs, as Sue mentions, if you do write articles that you then host on your website, you can share them. I mean, they're informative, they're written for a reason. So I wouldn't be too concerned if you're a little bit more wary about actual sort of sales side of things, because really that's a very small point in the big social media spectrum, really.
I'm actually thinking about sales. I always like to think of it as you're watching a series on TV, and I can't imagine that there's many people who jump with joy when the adverts come on if they're really engrossed in a program. I know I certainly don't subscribe to social media channels for adverts. I'm there for whatever the topic is that I'm interested in. So making sure that there's probably a minority of kind of sales pitch or adverts in there is probably the healthiest way to go, because people are interested in a topic and they will follow you for a topic or a number of topics. And occasional adverts people are more forgiving with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think on that sort of subject, I mean, when we deal with if we look at this from a more corporate perspective and we're dealing with sort of big brands, then even at that sort of level, we're still trying to be very relatable. We're trying to think of subjects within any given industry that people are going to be happy to talk about and engage with. I mean, if we're constantly just promoting ourselves and the products that we may be providing and what we're selling, then we're just going to get a rapid rate of unfollowers. I mean, we're not going to engage more people. If anything, we're certainly going to be alienating them. So it's definitely trying to keep that sort of activity to a relative minimum. Yeah, it's all about engaging content that you can create, whether that be a quick tweet or whether that be a picture if you're using Instagram, or whether it's a video that you upload to Facebook. I mean, in terms of actual commercial gain and you transferring that into a quick sale, that's very much a short-term and quite a blinkered view. You need to be looking long-term for social and grow your audience, and with that then you can look to generate conversions, and it will come naturally. If you're doing a really good job of social and you're engaging with your audience and they're interested in what you've got to say, then why wouldn't they buy your book? I mean, that's sort of the long and short of it. It's very much a long-term activity.
Yeah, as Ashley says, I always see it as, I think the key word there is natural. It's an extension of the human relationships that you have in the offline world. So I always see it a bit like, say, if you go to a party and you get stuck in the kitchen with some bore that's just banging on about himself all the time and doesn't ask you anything about you or show any interest in what you've got to say. And then the next time you go to a similar party, you see that guy again, and you just make a beeline in the other direction. And it's very much like that in social media. Don't feel that you've got to talk about you, your book, and be putting these marketing messages up all the time. Relax into it and just have human, genuine conversations, and then the benefits come long term. Don't expect things to happen overnight. Work on generating these long-term relationships.
Definitely, no, I completely agree. I actually, from the point of view of having worked on Author Hub, yes, we're encouraging authors to use social media, but we certainly don't want to get them to use it as a tool for basically having a sales pitch. That's not really going to engage with anyone. And actually the whole point of using social media, as you've said, is really about raising your awareness and engaging with readers and making yourself more discoverable. So adding links left, right and centre saying buy my book isn't really what it's all about. And actually this question came up on our LinkedIn group quite recently, and an author answered this question much more eloquently than I ever could. So I just wanted to read to you what he added and just to see what you guys thought. I think it really helps to sum up what you've said. So he said, the point about using social media is that it gets you out there, it maintains your public profile and lets you engage with other people interested in similar things to you. And if you manage to sell some books as a result, that's a bonus. And I think really that helps to reiterate the point that using social media is not about having a sales pitch, and it's about engaging with readers, making yourself more discoverable. And one of the very natural and good side effects of that is that hopefully that will also see an increase in sales. Cool. So thank you everyone for your feedback on that question. Our next one comes from an author who says, what are the differences between the main online tools authors can use to engage with readers, both in terms of audiences and perhaps control over content as well? I know there are a lot of tools out there, so I can understand where the author's coming from. So Ash, can I ask you to start off with this one, please?
Yeah, absolutely. It depends what you mean by tool. If we're talking about tools, then obviously there's a lot of social media management tools available. But if we boil it down a little bit further, I think perhaps we look at platforms. I think that's probably where the question sort of came from. So you've got obviously a huge medium of different platforms that you can utilize. So if we start at the top, obviously you've got Facebook, is the world's biggest social media platform. It's very much It's a kind of a one-way conversation. You're kind of promoting and telling people what you think they might want to hear. You will get some engagement as a result, and you'll get comments and likes and shares. But it's not necessarily the conversational tool that something like Twitter is, for example, where it's very much a two-way conversation. So it's going to be a case of perhaps putting a question out there, then reacting to what the audience have to say, and discussing that, and then elaborating upon it. And Yeah, I mean, that's where those two particular platforms differ. Obviously, then got things like YouTube, where it's all about video. You've got Instagram, where it's all about imagery. I'm not sure whether that has necessarily as much scope for the first two that I mentioned in terms of author use, certainly. But then you've got another big one in LinkedIn. Obviously, a lot of these questions and everything that's sort of surrounded us to this point in terms of Author Hub has all come from LinkedIn. So that's where you're going to find the professionals and really like-minded authors like yourselves, and they're going to be accessible through LinkedIn, and you're going to be able to establish who they are just through their profile. So I think they're sort of the main differences. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective and what I would consider the best tool for you guys as an author, I think would probably be Twitter. That can be managed through something like Hootsuite. You get a lot of different options. You can set up streams, and it's certainly worth looking into. Even the free trial is extremely good for Hootsuite, and the free account doesn't restrict you that much. And the analytics are really good as well. So if you want to see the performance of any tweets that you come up with or any particular links that you then compose, you can use Hootsuite to find out what exactly that's done. Have you seen a lot of people going through to your website as a direct result of a tweet that you came up with, for example? And I think that's sort of where the differences lie anyway. But I think, yeah, for the most part, Twitter and Facebook, with a little bit of LinkedIn, are probably the key for authors anyway. What do you think, Sue?
Well, one thing not to be underestimated is the power of a bit of planning as well, because you've got all the tools and different apps that you could use on mobile and desktop and all of that at your disposal. But I think to step back a bit, and even pen and paper is quite a good tool, and just to think, right, well, what are the topics that I'm going to be talking about? If I write a blog, what am I going to be putting on the blog? I was looking into this the other day, and Paulo Coelho was writing a blog post every day. You know, and that's going to sap all your time, and you might find at the end of the year you've written some great blog posts, but not a book. And I think to spend a bit of time just thinking, right, well, when am I going to tweet, or when am I going to update Facebook? Can I use the Facebook scheduling tool to maybe schedule 3 posts in one go that are going to go out all week? You know, what are the topics that I'm going to avoid? That kind of thing, because social media is so interesting, and you can quite easily disappear down rabbit holes. You know, you get into a conversation with someone, you find yourself tweeting about it. Maybe someone even says something negative about your book, and you don't know how to respond, and that can put you off track. So I think a bit of planning, you know, what will you say in this particular situation? What tweets are you going to put out before launch? You know, could you schedule some tweets to go out if you're at the Hay Festival, while you're away all weekend? Can you schedule some content? So I think the best tool at your disposal is actually just a bit of time, even if it's half an hour a week, just to plan your activity. And you might find that half an hour actually saves you time in the long run, or it will certainly get rid of that awful nagging feeling of, oh no, I've got my blog and I haven't updated it for weeks, because you've put that effort in, that time in to actually plan what's going out. So yeah, that's my top tip. It's free as well.
Definitely, yeah. I think evaluation is quite crucial as well. I mean, in this particular industry, it's going to be quite important to understand what people are reacting to. I mean, if you come up with a particular tweet and you get a massive response, then do more like that. If you get something that just sort of falls on its face, then steer clear of it. And if you can keep like a personal diary or a spreadsheet or something like that, where you're testing and you're trialing different types of content, and even different types of different times of the day. I mean, it might be more successful that you get a lot of your readership coming onto your Twitter account of between 8 and 9 at night, for example. It might be that they're really reactive in the morning when they're just waking up. And until you trial it and you find out, you're not really going to know. So yeah, trial and error, keep a track of progress, and then you're in a great position to evaluate sort of progress. And you need to also bear in mind the fact that Twitter is very much a natural timeline. You're going to see every tweet that goes out, whereas Facebook is a little bit cheeky with its algorithm. So you need to sort of bear that in mind too. And if you do post something on Facebook, it might have a little bit more longevity, but you're going to need to probably invest some money, because any Facebook algorithm that you use, if it's coming from like a Facebook page, is probably going to be fairly crippling. So it's definitely worth investigating sort of the way that either your Facebook page or your Twitter account is reacting with your audience. So definitely worth keeping an eye on those sort of things.
That was a really good point, I thought, as well, about what time of day you post your social media posts. because a lot of people, they feel under pressure to be posting around the clock, whereas if you think about it with books, people might be thinking about them during the day, but they're not really in that relaxed frame of mind where they're actually doing the reading themselves. They're not actually pursuing that activity. And you might find that actually pressure's off. You know, you can do your writing during the day and then just do a little bit of social media in the evening, the weekends, and that might be when people are most receptive. So don't feel that it's going to be this full-time job. It could be something that you can quite easily just do in a weekend. You know, so don't feel under pressure on that front.
Definitely, yeah.
And Andrew, is there anything else that you would add to that at all?
Definitely think about what really suits you with your workload and commitments. So if you think that you can't spend the time or can't afford the time to spend writing lots of different blog posts, then maybe try Twitter and see how you fare with that. I mean, Ashley's made some very good points there on Facebook and how it can be quite difficult sometimes to get that content to appear in the right place to the right audience at the right time. But yeah, definitely try various different networks and find the one that suits you best. And using some of the tools that we've mentioned helps you kind of work out which ones have the best response. Also, we've not mentioned forums, so there may be some forums that are particularly well suited to maybe your niche subject. So maybe doing a little bit of research, or maybe asking people with that old word of mouth thing. That'll never catch on. Ask them to see which ones that they would use, which forums other people use, and see if you can start using those to find your audience.
And in terms of, Sue, you were mentioning the importance of planning. In terms of perhaps if an author was scheduling their tweets, is there, I don't know if there's an optimum amount of times you should be tweeting or amount of times you should be making your account active on social media? Is it daily, weekly? I don't know if you have any advice for that at all.
That's one of the questions that we get asked a lot, and I suppose it depends what sort of quality content you've got to put out there. So if you can't think of much to say and you really are tweeting about your lunch and that kind of thing, then it's not going to be, you know, quality content. Or you're at the Edinburgh Festival or something, and you know, up your activity around that time. But I really try just to keep the content going. A couple of people recommend posting tweets, and you see it quite a lot. New York Times on Twitter, and I think they post all their tweets about 4 times just to make sure that they all get seen. But that gets a bit annoying. Being genuine, you know, you want to make your community feel that you are, this genuine person they can engage with. But I'd say kind of minimum of a couple a day, which may sound like a tall order, but once you get into it and start replying back to people, you know, that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Sue. So our next question comes from an author who has set up their own website, and they ask, what advice can you give me in terms of adding content to my website and keeping it updated to engage readers? So Ash, can I hand this one over to you to start off with?
Yeah, absolutely. So depending on the structure of the website, I'd imagine you've already got some evergreen content, so like an About Me kind of page. So you're already talking about what you've done, maybe like a discography, I suppose. So the amount of the books that you've already written, for example, or there's going to be a certain amount of static content that's going to remain there indefinitely. You'll update it sporadically when things change, but for the most part, that's not really going to be something that you'll be adjusting. So the best way to get fresh content onto any site is blog. If you can get a blog on your site and you can constantly plug or add additional content in there, even if it's on like a weekly or a monthly basis, if it's consistent, you're adding fresh content on there that people are going to read, they're going to take interest in. Potentially you're going to get some feedback on it as well, and it becomes very socially shareable. I mean, it gives you a massive mountain of opportunity. So yeah, the key is to get a blog set up. WordPress obviously is the biggest in the world for a good reason. It's extremely useful. So if you can get a good blog set up with a steady stream of content on there, then you're definitely on the right path to success.
And Sue, what are your thoughts on this one?
I was going to say exactly the same as Ashley. So, you know, Google loves fresh content, and if you're getting content out there, say you're a crime writer and you're writing about writing crime fiction, then that's a great way of people finding you and finding out about your work. And it's also a good way of keeping people engaged in between your books coming out, but at a pace of your choosing. You know, and it allows you to kind of keep that distance in a way from people. So you're not having to engage around the clock, but you're still putting some content out there, which, as Ashley says, is very shareable, and keeps people interested. So yeah, I'd definitely suggest blogging. Yeah.
It's longer form as well, so where you have a tweet is going to be limited to 140 characters, where Facebook you shouldn't really be doing really long posts because it'll just get shortened anyway. You can really go to town on your blog. I mean, your blog could be 1,000 words long, or it could be 400 words long. I mean, it just it gives you it gives you the more ability to go into more depth given any regarding subject. If you wanted to go into real depth regarding a recent news story that might pick up some sort of social traction or some search traction, then go for it. I mean, it's your blog. You can discuss more or less whatever you like, and it takes off the reins that are kind of given to you when you have to use social media. Just allows you to go into a bit more depth, elaborate a bit further, and with that it's a bit more detailed and therefore more interesting to the reader.
And sometimes we work with people in, say, tech or finance or insurance, and you talk about a blog and they go, oh, I don't like writing, I can't stand it, oh, I don't know if I want to do this, and we're saying, but it's really important. Whereas if you're an author, then writing is what you're great at, so it shouldn't be too daunting, the thought of doing some more writing. And it can be a welcome break, actually, from writing a more long-form novel or more sort of factual book, because these can be shorter, you know, you can play around with a few styles. So it might be a good way of almost relaxing, you know, giving your brain something else to focus on.
Okay, great. And have you got any perhaps any good examples of blogs that you've seen? Any blogs that you think work really well?
Well, if you look on publisher websites, so say Penguin or Hodder and Stoughton, they have some really good blogs there, and that can be a really good place to get ideas. So a lot of their authors will blog. They'll do just guest posts occasionally, or they'll pull in the posts from all their authors and just display them there, and then they'll write posts themselves as the publishers. So that can be a really, really good place to start. If you're just looking for ideas, you know, what's the best way to do it, how often, how long, what sort of topics authors go for. So yeah, I think that's a really good place to start.
And Andrew, I know you were, oh sorry Ashley, go on.
Sorry, no, just on a more technical viewpoint, I was going to say, if you're looking more at sort of the search side of things, so SEO, then the Moz blog is a fantastic resource. It'll just constantly keep you informed about any potential changes that even you as a relatively small-time author and a relatively small-time website builder or user is still going to be extremely useful information. And it's definitely worth keeping an eye on there if you wanted to take the search elements relatively seriously.
And Andrew, I know that you work on our 1584 site, which is the Cambridge University Press blog. Is there anything that you've seen that works really well on the blog that perhaps an author could use when setting up or managing their own website at all?
So the 1584 blog, cambridgeblog.org, little plug there. It's a blog which is primarily our authors write the articles, and some of the articles might be just 400 words long, or they might be the more longer articles, or they might be really long articles which we then serialize over a number of posts, which is really good for bringing back regular readers. That blog uses WordPress, which Ashley's just mentioned. But we've found that articles that pick up the kind of topical stories tend to do really well in social sharing and traffic. People are really interested in what's happening now. So if you have, if your topic of research or study is linked to something that is topical in the news, then if you can blog on that topic or even just tweet on that topic, then you're going to get attention.
Because I think I saw on our blog from one of the most popular posts in the past year was a blog relating to Frozen. Is that right?
Right.
It was. One of our authors had found a way to connect Wagner to the Disney film Frozen. So
Right. Yeah.
they'd managed to do that, and that blog post just, I don't want to say wipes the floor with all the other ones, but it does very, very well, and it has consistently done very well ever since we posted it. So
it's just the Disney film that won't go away. It's just it's relentless. And the second one coming out is not a great feeling for me. It's certainly gained some incredible popularity.
Yeah, but I think that's quite a good example, Andrew, of an author who's really written about something that's obviously very, very topical and very current, and really it captures people's imagination, and that's what helps drive traffic. So.
Absolutely, and that's prevalent on social media as well. We didn't really touch on like the use of hashtags and the use of hashtags across Facebook as well, to a slightly lesser extent, but with Twitter and things like that, you can go and find the conversation. If you've got hashtag authors and you realise that, well, wait a minute, this is really popular. People are tweeting about this all the time. It has 10,000 tweets a day with this hashtag. You don't have to wait for your audience to come to you. You can go to them. You can go and engage with them. And it's definitely worth investigating anything that you might think is relevant, or certainly anything that's timely. Find it, engage with it, and you never know, where will it take you?
Absolutely.
Brilliant, thank you. Our next question is kind of a similar topic, and it asks, what tips can you share that will help ensure my website is optimised to appear high up in search engine rankings? Sue, can I ask that one to you first of all?
Yeah, well, I've got a couple of thoughts on this. The first one, in terms of SEO, is to not get too bogged down with kind of data and worrying about algorithms, even though all this is very important. But just think like a human, and so think about the search terms that people might be putting into Google. So say, I mentioned earlier being a crime writer, so you might want to say that you write about crime in East Anglia, whereas if you say in your bio something like, expect the unexpected, no one is searching for that phrase on Google, whereas they will be searching for things to do with crime fiction. So think in a very kind of logical, human sort of way about how people would find you. And the second thing is to do with link building. How can you encourage quality sites to link to you? So say if you've written that post about Wagner and Frozen, that's the kind of thing might get picked up in the broadsheets because they want a more kind of, fine art sort of angle on it, I suppose. Can you ask them to link to you as well? So if you get a link from, say, The Guardian, then that's going to bring you lots of traffic over time. And just sort of make that part of your policy almost, that you're always asking people for links. When people write reviews about you, can they put a link to your website at the end? And just make that a thing that you do as a natural habit, because people can be too shy and retiring about these things, whereas you need to say, give me a link. If you want to review my book, then you need to link through to it as well, so people can find out more about me. So yeah, it's those two things really, thinking like a human and then encouraging links.
And Ashley, what are your thoughts on that one?
It's an absolutely massive subject, and it's a very small question. So I think there's a few things that you need to perhaps have a look at. So where Sue was mentioning what people are searching for, if you're not quite sure what people are searching for, then use the tools at your disposal. Use something like Google Trends. Find out what people are searching for within a given subject. If you type in crime writing in East Anglia, for example, if you put that in Google Trends, not only will it tell you how many people are searching for it, it'll give you some other suggestions. So maybe there's more search volume around East Anglian crime novels or East Anglian crime novelists, something like that. And it's just going to give you a little bit more data informity that you're going to then be able to incorporate in your website. So within your titles, within your meta titles and things like that, you'll be able to incorporate these terms. It's, again, try and keep it natural, try to keep it organic, and don't try to play the system, because Google will understand what you're doing and they'll penalize you for it. So it's just try to keep it on the straight and narrow, really. If you've got something like a WordPress blog and you're looking to optimize that a little bit further, there's millions of plugins out there, and the big one that I'd certainly recommend is Yoast. So they create an incredibly powerful SEO tool. So that will analyze your blog from an SEO perspective. Before you even publish it, you kind of know how it's going to perform. Is it long enough? Has it got enough keyword? Does it include your keyword, for example? So if your keywords are East Anglian crime novel, Does it include that in the title? Does it include it within the content? Is it used too much? It'll even flash things like that up, and it'll just give you a good indication as to how that blog might perform if the site is optimized correctly.
I think as well, it's about paying attention to the finer details as well. So every time you add an image, make sure it's got a title and it's something that might be relevant to the keywords people are searching for. Every time you add a link, give that a title. Put your keywords in the headings and in the title of the blog. Yeah, it's all those kind of little things that a lot of people overlook. Or say if you add images, make sure that the image isn't a massive file size, because when someone opens your site, perhaps on mobile, and if it takes more than 3 seconds to load up the site because the images are so big, then they'll click away. And that's the kind of Google tracks well, along with all these other thousands of little things that it's tracking. And websites that have got that low visibility, Google's going to score them less highly because they want to link people to sites that are good quality, easy to access, all that kind of thing. So, it's about paying attention to the finer points as well, and thinking about all the work that Google's doing behind the scenes to get people to your page.
Definitely, yeah.
It's definitely a sum of, I don't know, hundreds of parts to get yourself to the top of a search engine ranking, and it can take a long time, and it's not overnight. You can pay to put yourself there, but you can also spend an awful lot of money to get yourself there as well. So yeah, definitely pay attention to the smaller things that you can do, and over time you'll hopefully increase. We also have an Author Hub guide here, which covers some very basic points.
Oh, this is shameless.
Improving your SEO. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. So there's a guide there which you can download from cambridge.org/authorhub, which gives you some basic stuff. But yeah, it is a massive subject, and there's a whole industry which hangs off the back of achieving #1 search engine ranking. So it's a big subject.
And Ashley, you were talking about Google search trends. I'm not entirely sure that some of our authors will have heard of that tool before. So is that free? How easy is it to use? And could you just explain a little bit more about how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a free tool that Google actually provide. It helps you tailor your keywords with a bit of relevance and a bit more detail. So as I said, if you're looking for a particular term, it will come up. All you have to do is type it in like you would a search engine. It will then come up with how long would you like to spread this data over, so you can monitor it over, I don't know, over the course of 2 years, 3 years. You can monitor it over time, so you'll be able to see whether if it's coming into trend, for example. So if you're talking about something really prevalent at this point in time, something like food waste. So if you look at Google Trends for food waste, you will see that the graph that they present is doing nothing but going upwards. So it's showing a steady demonstration going up north. So if you talk about something food waste related, for example, then you know that you're going to be capturing quite a lot of the audience because people are searching for it. If you start, I don't know, if you're talking about the FIFA World Cup 2010, it would have peaked in 2009, 2010, and it will be on a decrease ever since then. So if you start talking about a subject like that, then you know that you're not going to be talking to that many people. The search terms are going to be relatively stunted, and the volume around it is going to be relatively minimal. So if you're talking about football, then talk about future events, something that might be coming up. Or if you're talking about current news events, just think about what might happen as a result and what people might be searching for. It's all these little things, and it's to do with sort of the way in which people might word it when they're typing it in. And if, for example, you think that the best search term around your particular niche is East Anglian crime novelist, but people don't spell novelist correctly, then that's going to sort of find you out. So yeah, have a look at Google Trends, just give it a go. It's free to use, very simple to use, and has a whole host of data that you'll be able to harvest.
Brilliant, thank you. That's really helpful. I guess from our author's point of view, they could use it as a tool to kind of see what topics are trending. For example, if an author is publishing a title in astronomy, you can kind of find what topics in that field are trending and use it as a way of engaging with readers online. So
absolutely,
that sounds like a very useful tool. Okay, thank you. So our next question is on a related field, and again covers topics that are included in Author Hub's guide to search engine rankings, which Andrew is now demonstrating at the camera again. Very nice, thank you. So the question is, can you explain how SEO works and what I should bear in mind when using my social media accounts? I know this is a big topic, but I'd really appreciate your thoughts on this one because I know it's something that's particular interest for authors at the moment. So Ash, can I ask what you think on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of how SEO works, if we just talk about obviously the big search engine, we talk about Google, how they like to present themselves is they're connecting the people that are searching for whatever they're searching for with the most relevant term. They don't like the idea that they're being manipulated in any way. They don't like the idea that they're being pushed in the wrong direction, so to speak. They want to make sure that there's as little between the person that's searching for a given term and the actual result that they want to achieve directly from that. So the way that it works is if you've got a really authoritative website with amazing content that's being really heavily shared across the internet, you're more likely to appear higher up on the search ranking for a given term than if you had a very poor website that was very spammy or it just wasn't populated very much. So the way that Google like to perceive it and the way that they act might be slightly different, but what they want to do is make sure that they're putting as little in the way of you having to scroll down the page to get whatever you're looking for as possible. So in order to make that better for you as an author, for example, if you want to appear first for East Anglian crime novelist, then it would be a case of making sure that you talk about that subject, that you include the term East Anglian crime novelist, and that you've got a good amount of links linking back to both your page and the specific term in question, so the specific blog post that it might be. There's a whole huge amounts of algorithms that go into calculating exactly what Google do to get you up that ranking, but if you're writing naturally and you're writing with really good content, and you're promoting it properly, so through the social channels, and you're getting it in front of the right eyes, naturally you should see some progression. So I wouldn't get too hooked up on the technicalities of SEO, but if you're providing good quality content, then it should come to the fore regardless. I mean, cream always rises to the top, right? So it's very much the same.
Okay, great, thank you. Sue, is there anything else that you wanted to add to that? Or?
Well, I mean, one thing to point out is that Google, you know, we can all make an educated guess at what it prioritizes, but Google is never going to give away like a checklist, do all these things on the first page, because otherwise, you know, it would weight it unfairly, and the smaller guys wouldn't ever get a look in, even though they had, you know, really good quality product. So the best thing to do really is to try and think like a human in all the content that you put out there, really. And as Ashley was saying, you know, be aware of the different tricks and the things that can help, but don't get so hung up on it that you end up writing a piece of content that is almost unreadable because it's just so loaded with keywords. You know, so because you can spot something that's been written by an SEO specialist because they just forget to write like a human. And it's so obviously being manipulated so that in an attempt to be picked up by search engines. And I think if you're an author, you don't want to be losing that voice that you've got, and you don't want to be thinking, right, well, when I write a book, I write it in this way, but when I write for the web, I'm going to be writing in this very, very sort of artificial SEO style. So, you know, be aware of the keywords and how to add them in headings and all those sort of things so that they'll be picked up by Google, but don't let it affect the way you write too much, because then it will kind of affect your brand voice, and people will feel like this isn't something that's been written by this author that I know and love. So it's really important, but don't let it kind of sidetrack you too much.
Great, thank you. And Andrew, I know this touches on many points that are already covered in the Author Hub guide, but is there anything else that you would want to add to that authors should know about?
Well, I definitely agree. Write for your audience. Don't necessarily write for the search engines, because if you're writing something which is very stylized for search engines, it's going to read like a robot, and you're not really writing for robots. So definitely write for a human audience. One thing I'd add is actually this question just tags on a bit about bearing in mind when I use my social media accounts. So if you are using Google Plus, then your Google Plus posts will turn up in some search results almost instantly. particularly for people who are logged into their Google accounts. So those Google accounts will be their Gmail accounts, or their Google Plus accounts, or their YouTube accounts. If your audience is logged into those, then they're more likely to see those, particularly if they have already got some kind of contact relationship with you already, then your posts will be prioritized to them. But also recently, Twitter struck a deal to get tweet content back into Google search results. I've not seen any yet, so I'm not quite sure when that's going to go live, whether it will sort of turn up in the US first or Japan first. I'm not sure, but so your Twitter post, your tweets, sorry, should start appearing in Google search results soon as well.
Oh wow, okay, so if an author is actually proactively using a Twitter account, chances are in the future that's going to start appearing in Google search results.
Yes. Yeah.
Another thing on that point as well is about YouTube. So YouTube is a Google product, and you might notice when you run searches on things in Google that YouTube results come up top. You know, what are the chances of that? So if you don't feel comfortable writing a blog, or you don't feel like you've got anything that you want to actually write down, you can also do little videos. You know, perhaps you could get somebody to interview you and video it and put that online. You know, there's so many different types of content that you can do, and you might find that if you use YouTube, not only is it quite an easy, quick way of doing interesting, shareable content, but it also comes quite high in the searches as well. And if you name your video with a bit of an SEO focus, so get all those keywords in there, write a good description, which is something that people often overlook. They put the video up, think, oh, thank God for that, right, I've done that, and they forget to write a good description to go with it. If you tick all of those boxes, then you might find that your content gets right to the top of the tree in a way that just a simple text blog post might not. So it's worth playing around with different formats, I think.
And certainly the Author Hub website, we do have I'm going to do another plug. We've got a guide to doing author videos. Certainly, as you were just saying, Sue, adding a kind of a video on YouTube, whether an author chooses to do that themselves or if they wanted to get in touch with the Author Hub team and send their footage to us. Not only are videos a very powerful way of actually being able to address your readers and engage with them, but as you're suggesting, they actually kind of appear quite high up in search engine rankings, so they're a good way of making our authors discoverable.
Just to add to a point that Sue's made just in answering this question, and also an earlier question about making sure you put descriptive titles to your images, it's very important to do that from point of view, because obviously search engines like Google will put image search results as a sample of them anyway at the top of search results. So if you have correctly described your image, then it may be that the image turns up in those search results, and when they click on that image, they end up going through to your website or your blog or something else that's actually yours. Just another way of ranking.
Brilliant, thank you. So our penultimate question is, if there was one social media account you could recommend I use as an author, what would it be and why? And I think this one's going to be really interesting because I'd like to see whether as panellists you all agree or whether you've all got very different opinions. So Sue, can I ask this one to you first of all?
Well, I think I'm going to do a politician-style answer on this one. I think it may be better to try and pick one and do it really well, instead of trying to do lots and then spreading yourself too thinly and finding that then they're being left unupdated. And I think it's about finding something that you feel comfortable with. So you might be someone that just wants to do a quick piece to camera every other day or every month or something, or you might feel that a blog is the best place for you, you know, or some people are very comfortable with Twitter. People like, I don't know, Neil Gaiman, for example, or Margaret Atwood is a big Twitter fan. You know, these people really take to it, whereas other people don't. So I think it's about finding somewhere that you feel most comfortable. Something like Facebook will give you a little bit of distance from people because you don't have to post so frequently. You can choose when you want to respond, and you can put up what sort of content you like. Twitter means you'll be engaging all the time around the clock, and it might be a mix of good and bad. You know, people can be a little bit more, should we say, uppity on Twitter sometimes. So, you know, it kind of depends on where you feel comfortable. But I think the trick is, particularly when you're starting out, find just one or two areas that you want to go for and do them well. So yeah, a bit of a politician's answer on that one, I'm afraid.
That's so fine. I'll let you off.
Okay.
Ashley, what do you think?
I think I'm going to be well and truly off the fence. I'm going for Twitter. I think it's just the way that you can all react with the audience, you can interact with the audience, you can engage with them, and you can find them. I mean, if you aren't getting the people coming to you to discuss a conversation or talk about a particular topic or your book, for example, go find them. Find out what people are talking about and just try and engage with them. I think Twitter for an author is invaluable. And I think that's certainly where you should start. If you find that you're not comfortable using it, then yeah, perhaps have a look at Facebook, create like an author Facebook page, and then perhaps look to utilize that and see if that's a bit more within your comfort zone. But for me, I think certainly being able to tweet and do it on such a consistent basis without coming across as spammy or a little bit untoward like it might on Facebook, I think Twitter is certainly the tool. If I was a really good author, I'm not. If I was a really good author, though, I'd be heavily publishing Twitter.
And as well, as I was saying before, with Twitter, it's a place for authors to really shine because they can say something in such a way that it's particularly witty, particularly topical, particularly biting. You know, they've got that skill in their hands that people in other professions don't have. So yeah, so authors that are good on Twitter tend to be very good on Twitter, and they really get the results from it.
Yeah, we've certainly got some very good authors on Twitter. There's a couple of examples that I'm going to name for our next question, and they're working really well. So, Andrew, what do you think about social media accounts? If there was one that you could recommend, what would it be?
Well, I would recommend Twitter, but I feel under pressure now to suggest another one. So.
I'm so glad that Sue was on the fence. That just made my life a little bit easier.
Amy, pick me first next time. To pick a different social media channel, I think that if you have the benefit of having something which is very visual, say your work or your research is I don't know, working in maybe the arts or humanities, you might have the opportunity to take a lot of pictures. And so using those on something like Pinterest or even Instagram might be just a slightly different way for you to come across as an expert in the field, to reach a different audience, and yeah, to really kind of shine in something that might better suit you, because contributing to Pinterest and Instagram can be quite quick, and maybe just as quick as contributing to Twitter. So give it a go.
Good answer.
Brilliant, thank you, Andrew. And our last question for today is, do you have any examples of individuals who've used social media effectively? So I guess this can really benefit authors who perhaps aren't really sure where to start off with, and if we have any examples to illustrate where they could perhaps go with using their social media accounts. So Sue, can I ask this one to you first of all, please?
Yeah, the two I mentioned a second ago, so Margaret Atwood, I think she described her Twitter community as it's like having fairies at the bottom of the garden or something. She's a big fan of Twitter and gets a lot of pleasurable engagement from it. Neil Gaiman, he's got something like 1.8 million followers. I'm assuming he keeps some sort of lists running, so he's not actually reading through every single tweet. Paulo Coelho, who I was mentioning, you know, he's very good on different mediums. But also have a look around something like Goodreads, because a lot of authors use that as their platform. I was looking at Isabel Allende and reading some of the author Q&A that was going on with her. So some authors just use that as a very kind of simple platform. There's a Scottish author I quite like called Andrea Gillies on Twitter, who I'd never heard of before, but I follow her tweets all the time. She just seems hilarious. She was quite funny when the Scottish referendum was going on. And she hasn't got a million followers, but it's just a nice example of someone who has come to my attention, who I wouldn't have heard of before, just from being funny and engaging on Twitter. So yeah, there's lots of examples. And again, if you go back to the publisher websites like Hodder and Stoughton, like Penguin, all of these publishers, and just have a little look, or Cambridge University Press, have a look at the authors that are there and see who's kind of rising to the top. You know, see who they're promoting and talking about, because they'll be talking about the ones who've got the social media feeds worth following. And just, you know, just spend a bit of time just over a cup of tea, just having a good rummage around and seeing who's out there.
And Ashley, what do you think of that one?
The way that I see Twitter, as I said, is very much a communicational tool. So I think Paula Hawkins is just doing it exceptionally at the moment. She just keeps everything very much on the level. She talks like you or I would. I mean, it's just it's just a pleasant place to be. Like, her stream is just, she's continually modest. I mean, obviously she's just released the Girl on the Train, and it's just seen phenomenal success. Yet with that, she still replies to individual tweets. Like, I tweeted her saying, fantastic book, I couldn't put it down, absolutely gripping, and she took the time to reply to me. And I found that was a really touching gesture. And I think if you can use Twitter in that sort of manner and you can really interact with your audience, then I know for sure, regardless of what comes out next, I'll be going to buy Paula Hawkins' book. So job done. And I think if you can just continue to interact and engage with your audience and actually let them know that their feedback provides value and you do appreciate what they've got to say, then you're onto a surefire winner. And I think, yeah, she's handling it really well. She only has like 2,500 fans. I mean, she doesn't use it as much as some massive authors like Bret Easton Ellis, people like that, where they sort of go a little bit berserk in terms of the tweeting that they do and what they talk about. But she's really modest. She does it in a really nice manner, and it just generally conveys that she's a real person I'd like to meet and just say hello to. And I feel that she'd be really approachable, and I think Twitter just helps break down that barrier, and that's definitely, for me, the big win for that one.
An interesting thing happened with Stephen King, which is for years he just kept off social media, but of course he's a massive author. And so what happened was that people were making their own feeds in his place, you know, because there's so many people who want to talk about Stephen King and his work. So you'd have all these Twitter feeds, and which you'd think were by him, or other discussions going on. And I think at some point his management, he probably has management, you've got to control the narrative here, because you've got all these people talking about you and almost pretending to be you. It's about time we put an official stamp on it. And so I think by being on social media, then he allows the conversation to be centered around him and stay focused on him and his works, rather than veering off on all these tangents, which is just, you know, just another benefit of being on social media that is worth touching upon.
Andrew, do you have any examples of people who are using social media well?
Well, actually, I was going to say Margaret Atwood as well, because she does engage with her audience. She replies, she retweets a lot of people. She kind of shows her personality through her accounts, in that she talks about the subjects that she's interested in, and retweets subjects that she's interested in as well. So I think the fact that she's there and actively engaging with people who are interested in her and the subjects that she is interested in, I think that has done her a big favour there. Obviously she's well known, but I think she handles her account very well. And also I've seen quite a lot of engagement from the UK comedian Sarah Millican. She responds to a lot of people. She obviously gets a lot of tweets sent to her, but on Twitter she is very active, and she'll even talk to her audience in the interval of her shows, and reply to them before she goes back on. So she's very engaged with her social media.
It's definitely worth bearing in mind as well. If you're going to write the next big selling book and it's going to be an industry breaker and it's top 3 and Waterstones, whatever it might be, people are going to be talking about your book. Even if you're not in on the conversation, people are going to be talking about it. And if you've got a social presence and you can engage with it, then you're piggybacking on that success, and it's only going to make it bigger. So yeah, regardless of whether you're actually going to be actually engaging with your audience or not, people are going to be talking about you. So it's definitely worth bearing that in mind. And if you can have a social presence and you have the opportunity to really take advantage of it, then do so, definitely.
Yeah, I think there should be a word for this kind of modern where you want to say something positive about experience you just had, but you're disappointed because the person isn't on Twitter. So maybe you've read that great book that's just come out by your favourite author, and you want to say, I love that book, you know, I was gripped until the last page, and you want to include the author's name in that tweet, and you're not there, you know, and you find that quite a lot. There's this sort of, you really want to say something positive, their work for them. So yeah, you do something or someone I'd be yeah, telling my friend that they are.
Okay, and I was having a think last night about some academic authors who were also kind of very proactive and prominent on social media, and I had a few examples to give. So a couple of authors that sprung to mind are Christopher P. Long and Michael Scott. Christopher has pretty much every social media account I can think of going, and is incredibly proactive and really uses it as a way to get himself out there. He uses all of his accounts incredibly well as a way of kind of making himself discoverable. And similarly, Michael Scott is another very proactive author on Twitter, again, who uses it as a way of kind of engaging with readers in a very effective way. Another author would be Richard Brown. Richard Brown has a very good blog and website, and again uses that in a very effective way to engage with readers. Another interesting example is a guy called John C. Wells, who John used to run a very, very popular phonetics blog, and actually the contents of that blog helped to inform his most recent title with the press, which was a title called Sounds Interesting, which was published last year. So he's definitely a guide worth recommend checking out. And finally, another person that sprung to mind was Dean Anthony Grattan. And Dean is someone who's recently been talking on our LinkedIn group. Dean has something like 300,000 followers on Twitter, which in itself is an impressive stat. But I think I agree with you guys in that personally what I think makes his account work is the fact that you get a sense of who Dean is as a person on Twitter. He uses it, you get a real sense of his sense of humour. He tweets very regularly. He might post things about related news articles or what he's doing, but it's also kind of personal things about what he's up to. And I really even like his profile description, which I noted it down. It describes him as a husband, cook, foodie, wine lover, best-selling author and columnist. And I think
priorities.
Yeah, I think as readers you get a really good, a well-rounded picture of who he is as an author, and personally that's what I like, and I think that's what other people like when using social media. So I definitely recommend checking out all of those accounts if you're an author and you're looking at trying to improve your social media strategy. And something that I just wanted to end on was I attended the Future Book Conference in London last year, and there was a panel discussion on using social media, and panellists included people from YouTube and Tumblr and huge online brands. And one of the things they said was that the promise of using social media wasn't really its ability to target huge volumes of people, but actually its ability to target specific groups of people, and to even target niche groups of people, perhaps in a way that wasn't ever achievable before. And I think sometimes in academic publishing there's a perception that maybe social media doesn't have a role, but I think all of those points prove that actually it does, and we can really use these tools as a way to engage with readers in specific fields and specific subject interests and really have a conversation with them. So thank you everyone for all of your examples. That kind of brings us to the end of today's Author Hub Google Hangout. We've kind of finished a little bit earlier than expected, but I hope all of that has been of interest to those of you watching. If you do need any more advice, then you can of course get in contact with the Author Hub team. You can do so either by messaging us on LinkedIn, or you can email authorhub@cambridge.org. And all that's left for me to say is a huge thank you to our panel members today, to Andrew, Sue and Ashley. I really appreciate your time today and for all of your really interesting, useful answers. I've certainly found today useful. So
You're welcome.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So yeah, thank you so much for your time. And to those of you who contributed to today's questions, again, thank you. And to those of you watching, I really do hope that you have found today useful and insightful. So I guess until next time, thank you ever so much and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.